Carmen, Salmon, Arm, Lumpy, and Caslow, there's Grand Forks and Cream with the Radiant, Hot Springs, Arnfarm, Elkhart, and Peachland, all of Vernuska, Bridway, Creston, Golden, and Montrose, and Roslyn, and Slocan.
Welcome back to This is VANCOLOUR. Earlier this month, British Columbia rejoiced to learn that a beloved media personality returned home to Vancouver after a year-long unpaid sabbatical where he traveled the world. 52 countries in 52 weeks, at least that was the plan. But for someone who loves BC and knows its ins and outs like he does, did he learn anything about BC while being away from BC? Let's ask him. He is, of course, the Municipal Affairs reporter for CBC Vancouver, Justin McElroy. Justin, hello and welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
So 52 countries in 52 weeks, was that accomplished?
That was accomplished. Managed to do what I set out to. Didn't get to go to a couple countries along the way because of things that happen when you're traveling the entire time.
Which countries did you end up missing out
Couldn't get to Jordan because their airspace was closed because of bombings that were happening through the Middle East.
Geopolitical issues, yeah.
Always come up, and wasn't able to go to Nepal just because I didn't want to risk. I had to apply for both my Chinese and Indian visa while I was on the road, and it made more sense then to not have that in the middle in case something happened.
So did you have backup countries then?
I had backup countries. I had 35 different spreadsheets going on about plans A, B, and C. Some people can be spontaneous, Mo. I am not one of those people. And so I wanted to make it happen. I wanted to see all these places that I had never seen in the world. And it was amazing to do. And it was amazing to be able to have this big idea that I came up with almost 5 years ago now.
Wow.
To plan it through, to save up, and then to actually make it work. I just pinched myself that it happened.
Well, good for you. Now, I have to ask, you hit all the continents?
Not Antarctica, sadly.
Okay, that's next time.
That's next time,
Okay.
to trip number 2. But yeah, otherwise, and you know, it wasn't a bucket list thing of I have to do 52 because that's in 1 week, or I have to go to all of the places. It really was just a case of I never been anywhere other than Canada and the US in my entire life.
Wow.
And when I realized I could do this, I went, you'd be regretting it the rest of your life if you didn't. And I just thought, where are all the places in the world that I'd like to do? So I spent like a year basically creating a mood board and researching and looking and being inspired, and then going, how can I actually stitch together all these dreams that I've had since I've been a kid and inspiration reading all these travel books into something that sort of works.
Well, your Instagram account is now that thing.
Yes.
Like when you see these Instagram accounts with crazy travels, like that's now your Instagram account. I have to ask though, which country did you spend the most time in?
There were a few that I ended up spending like 2.5 weeks in.
Okay.
So America at the beginning, I traveled
Big
by
country,
traveled by train, and America's trains tend to go pretty slowly. So that took time. Spent about 2.5 weeks in China, 2.5 weeks in India.
Again, big countries.
And
Makes
also
sense.
New Zealand at the very end, because that was the
Oh.
last place, and they have some of the most amazing out of this world hiking, right? Like people know it from Lord of the Rings.
Right.
And so you're basically hiking variations of the Shire and Mount Doom all the time, along with amazing oceans and beaches. And when I tried to figure out how do I want to end this year, I went, you know what, having these lovely multi-day hikes seems extremely cool, extremely spiritual, but that required a little bit more time than other countries where you're just jumping around by trains all the time.
So let's talk about those other countries. Was there a country that you spent the shortest time in?
Lots. I mean, you know, when you're going through Northern and Central Europe the way that I did, oftentimes I was like, okay, I want to be in the capital city in Prague and Vienna, and so maybe you only spend 1 or 2 days there, or Stockholm in Sweden, or Helsinki. The difficult thing is you're always trying to balance what's the minimum amount of time that I could spend in this place and not be extremely ticked off at myself at the end that I missed it. Just because there's so many places I wanted to go. You never know when you're going to have an opportunity like this in the future. So yeah, plenty of 1-day countries and some that were 2.5 weeks, but I managed to balance it out to have a rhythm that worked.
Now, before I ask you about how you prepare for such a journey,
Yeah.
I need to ask you, did you learn anything about British Columbia while you were away from BC? Because you're like the BC guy. You know the ins and outs of this province.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if you had new insights.
From Atlanta to Zabalos. I mean, the thing, because people ask you when you do something like this, they go, how have you changed? And
That's kind of what I'm getting at.
Well,
sure.
and what I realized is, I don't think I changed too much, but I deepened in terms of the thoughts I had or the emotions I feel about certain things, because when you get to be exposed to the entire world, you gain a broader understanding and you have more things that you can think about when you look back at your own life for things that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So, one right off the top is how we get around in British Columbia. Virtually every other developed country in the world has extremely elaborate train systems or tons of buses or ways it's just extremely easy to get from point A to point B without a car. And doing that for a year and being able to, at the drop of the hat, go, oh, actually, there's this city 600 kilometers away that I want to go to. Or in China saying, oh, I'd actually like to go to the giant panda reserve, which I didn't originally plan, but now I'm in China and I deeply want to see the pandas. Can I make that work? And no matter what country I was in, it was pretty easy. Either there's a high-speed rail line or there's tons of buses connecting all of the different cities. And then it makes you think while you're in the middle of this, oh, I could never do this in British Columbia, right?
Yeah.
So there's things like that. On the other hand, our integration with nature, right? Not just in Vancouver, where, we love our mountains and our oceans next to each other, but Victoria, up and down Vancouver Island, even so many of our small towns that are on rivers and next to the side of a mountain, the way that we integrate nature and natural geography and the blending and the amount of different things people can do that are connected, whether on the water or whether they're hiking up a mountain. Most places you go into the world, there's sort of like the one place you go, right? The one dock, the one hike. So many of our cities, there's so many opportunities to engage with nature where nature comes in and integrates in with the actual houses and parks and everything else. It really made me appreciate. I loved everywhere I went, and there were so many highlights, but constantly thinking, well, on this one thing, they don't do it quite as well as they do back home was really inspiring.
Yeah, very cool. Really quickly, I know you're a data guy.
Yes.
How did you break down the trips that were on planes versus rail versus the bus versus ferries? Like, I feel like you know the numbers.
Yeah, I went on about 110 train journeys over the course of the year. Again, most of the world, that's a very easy and straightforward way to get from point A to point B. Took about 35 planes, about 30 buses, and about 20 ferries.
Now, in this journey, how do you pack for this journey? That you're going to all these different climates and countries, but you packed very light. Yeah,
well, I wanted to not be burdened by it. And I knew that there were so many places that I was going. And so I went, how can I fit this all into one carry-on and one sort of small backpack? And then you just sort of like reverse plan it by there, where you go, okay, well, I have this amount of room, so I've got to have a small computer thing, so that a tablet, right? And then you go, how much room is there for the amount of exchange of pants and shorts and shirt? And it worked out that, you get about 10 days worth. So it becomes a fun challenge trying to find a laundromat in some of these places. But also, you learn very quickly the things that actually matter for you to have on the road, right?
Totally.
And when you're going vacationing, if it's just for 2 weeks or something, you think, oh, this is a fancy shirt for this occasion. And oh, this would work great for this sort of hike or beach that's really customized to that. Whereas when you travel like this, you go, what are clothes that broadly work, that are the right temperature, that sweat out well, all of these that don't overheat. And then it just becomes sort of intuitive and natural of, all right, this is the stuff. And, some people might get bored wearing the same 6 shirts for an entire year, but it didn't matter to me.
But this does not leave a lot of room for souvenirs.
No, well, not if you're creative. So
okay, tell me about it.
Well, and so I basically created an elaborate network of, I was lucky throughout the trip to sometimes meet up with friends or family, sometimes who were explicitly joining joining me for a week of the vacation. But other times it would be like, hey, I happen to be in Singapore at the same time as you, or in Denmark, or hey, let's meet up. And by the way, would you mind taking like a little like tote bag worth of stuff back with you on the plane? And so people said that they would do that. And aside from going to 50
carriers taking back some souvenirs.
Exactly. Because international shipping, not a fun time. Let me tell you that. And so I also came up with the challenge of could I get like at least one souvenir for all of the 52 countries. And so that became a lovely side quest, one of many during this, and managed to make it work.
Amazing. Justin, an amazing trip. Thank you so much for sharing your insights. I really appreciate your time tonight.
Hey, thanks so much, Bob.
And welcome back.
Thanks.
Folks, thank you so much for watching. And thank you, of course, to Justin McElroy and Tamara Taggart for tonight's show. Now, there is a federal election happening. We are not going to ignore it, but we're also not going to cover it like we did with the provincial election. As always, I'd love to hear from you. If you have any ideas for topics or guests relevant to BC, please shoot me an email, mo@thisisvancolour.com. Also, don't believe everything you read on social media, especially during elections, because you are being manipulated. But please follow me at VanColour. We're back next week, but until then, be colorful. Peace.